Welcome back to another episode of Jungbub Talk. Today, we're diving into a topic that's been a subject of much debate recently: the role of clergy in politics. With so many religious leaders speaking out on political issues, there's a growing divide on whether they should even be involved. Some argue they should stay neutral, while others believe they have every right to share their views. What's your take on this, B?
It's definitely a tricky one. On the one hand, I get why people feel the clergy should stay out of politics. They hold a certain position of moral authority, and getting too entangled in politics could undermine that. But on the other hand, they're part of society too. So shouldn't they have the right to speak up on important issues?
That's the question, isn't it? There's a perspective that says clergy should never get involved in politics because they're meant to lead spiritually, not politically. The idea is, if you're a religious leader, your role is to provide guidance and help solve problems, not to take sides in political debates.
Right? And I think what you're getting at is that if a clergy person were to get involved in politics, it could create conflicts of interest. Sometimes they might need to take a side, and that could easily lead to favoritism or bias. That's a dangerous line to walk when you're supposed to be the moral compass for your community.
Exactly. And when you think about it, clergy are supposed to be the ones who can provide solutions when society faces a problem. But if they're caught up in politics, can they still maintain that role? Wouldn't they be distracted from their real purpose, which is to help guide people spiritually and solve deeper societal issues?
That's an interesting point. If you look back at history, it's clear that there was a time when society was developing rapidly after World War II. But the clergy, instead of being active in society, seemed to retreat into their studies. There's this sense that they were preparing, but they didn't contribute much in terms of actual action.
Yeah, and there's something quite paradoxical about that, don't you think? The clergy were supposed to be working on themselves, preparing for a time when they'd be needed. But, as you said, they didn't really achieve much during that period. Some would argue that while they were preparing, society was moving forward without them, and now they're playing catch-up.
Exactly. And let's not forget, some clergy members started making money by offering prayers or blessings, which seems like it's far removed from their original purpose of spiritual guidance. The problem here is that once they start taking money for their services, they enter into business rather than focusing on their spiritual work.
Right, that shift from spiritual practice to business is what blurs the line. It's almost as if they've become another service provider, like a lawyer or a consultant, and that, in itself, raises questions about their integrity and purpose. If someone's paying you for spiritual guidance, how do we know it's genuine?
Exactly. And that leads back to the point. If you're a clergy member practicing asceticism, your focus should be on growth and helping others without expecting anything in return. If you start participating in politics, it can be seen as an abandonment of that ascetic lifestyle. You're no longer a spiritual leader, but just another player in the political game.
And I think that's where the real concern lies. If clergy members want to get involved in politics, they need to drop their title as religious leaders. They can join political parties, but they shouldn't rely on their followers for support. Their followers aren't there to provide political power. They're there for spiritual guidance.
It makes sense, doesn't it? You can't mix those two worlds. You can't be a politician and a spiritual leader at the same time because they demand different things from you. And if a clergy member uses their influence over their followers to gain political power, it could have severe consequences, both for them and for society.
Absolutely. It's like mixing oil and water. Those two roles just don't fit together. But interestingly, the clergy who are involved in politics today, most of them have received an education in theology or philosophy. They've become intellectuals, not practitioners of asceticism.
That's an important distinction. If you're an intellectual, you start making judgments and distinctions about what's right or wrong. But a true practitioner, someone in the middle of their practice, isn't supposed to make those kinds of decisions. They should focus on helping, not judging.
So, in the end, it seems like the clergy should focus on fulfilling their spiritual duties. If they want to become involved in politics, they should step away from their religious position. Otherwise, they risk undermining the very work they're supposed to be doing.
I agree. And we also have to reflect on our role as society. If we continue to blindly support these religious figures in politics, we're enabling the very problem we're criticizing. It's up to us to discern who's truly doing the work of a spiritual leader and who's just using their position for personal gain.
Definitely. At the end of the day, it's not just about the clergy, it's about how we, as a society, engage with them. We need to take a step back and consider whether we're supporting them in their spiritual journey or enabling them to misuse their influence for political purposes.
Well said. This is a complex issue, and it's not something we can solve overnight. But the first step is recognizing the problem and understanding the implications of clergy involvement in politics.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll wrap up today's discussion. It's a thought-provoking topic, and we hope this has sparked some deeper reflection for all of you listening. Until next time, take care.